Emily Parker stood alone in her quiet suburban home in Portland, Oregon, late on a cold Thursday night. The house felt strangely larger without her husband Daniel, who was away on another business trip. He had been traveling more often lately: Chicago, New York, sometimes even international land, although Emily understood that his job demanded it. The distance was beginning to feel heavier each time he packed his bags. Tonight, the silence was broken by one small, annoying problem. The kitchen ceiling light wouldn't stop flickering. It wasn't just a little dim, it flashed like a dying firefly. Bright one second and dark the next, enough to give her a headache. She tried ignoring it while making tea. But even the shadows on the walls seemed to pulse with the faulty bulb. Finally, she sighed, dragged a dining chair across the floor, and climbed up carefully. She reached up to tighten the bulb, hoping the problem was simple. But the moment her fingers touched the glass, the light sparked once, fizzled, and went completely dark. The entire kitchen fell silent and dull. Emily stepped down slowly, staring up at the ceiling. It was just a light bulb. Yet the loneliness in the room felt sharper now. She missed having someone home, someone to laugh with, someone to share silly household problems with. It wasn't about needing help. It was about connection. Her phone buzzed on the counter at first. She assumed it was Daniel checking in. But when she picked up the phone, she froze for a moment. It wasn't Daniel. It was Ryan Miller, Daniel's closest friend since college. Ryan was someone she had seen at holidays, barbecues, occasional dinners, always kind, always respectful, always a little hard to read. The message said. Daniel mentioned the kitchen light went out. I'm in the area. Want me to stop by and fix it? Emily stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. She wasn't uncomfortable with Ryan. He'd always been polite and helpful, but she didn't want to seem needy or dramatic. It was just a light. Still, the house felt too silent, too still. And she didn't want to spend the night in the dark kitchen waiting for Daniel to return next week. She typed back, "If it's not a problem, yes, thank you. I'd appreciate it." Within 20 minutes, there was a knock at the door. Emily brushed back her loose brown hair and opened it. Ryan stood there wearing a dark jacket and casual jeans, holding a small toolkit. The cold night breeze followed him in, carrying the scent of winter rain. He smiled, lightly warm, but a little tired. "Hey, Emily, heard your kitchen is living in the dark ages." She laughed softly. "Something like that. Come in." He walked inside, and suddenly the house didn't feel so empty. His presence filled the space in a way she didn't realize she needed. Comfortable, familiar, yet not intimate. Ryan walked to the kitchen, looked up at the light, and nodded, as if confirming an unspoken challenge. "Looks like the socket might be loose. It's not just the bulb." Emily watched from the counter as he pulled a small step stool closer and climbed up. His movements were confident, practiced. She hadn't realized how much she missed having someone around who handled things so effortlessly. Daniel used to be like that before his schedule changed, as Ryan worked. Emily noticed he wasn't making conversation the way he usually did. He seemed quieter, thoughtful. She wondered if he had something on his mind, but she didn't ask. Instead, she listened to the sound of his tools clicking softly against metal. A strangely comforting noise. After a few minutes, he adjusted the wiring inside the socket and screwed the bulb back in. He flipped the switch. The kitchen filled with steady, warm light, no flickering, no sparks. Just clarity. Emily smiled. "You're a lifesaver. I would have probably broken something trying to fix that." Ryan shook his head. "You would have figured it out. You're more capable than you think." It was a simple compliment, but the sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Daniel rarely said things like that anymore. Not because he didn't care, he just wasn't around enough to notice. Everyday moments. Ryan didn't step off the stool right away. He paused, still looking up at the light, then slowly looked down at her. There was something in his eyes, soft, curious, maybe even conflicted. Not romantic, not inappropriate, but heavy with thoughts he didn't say. Emily felt suddenly aware of how close he was. Not uncomfortable, just aware. She stepped back slightly, grounding herself. Ryan finally climbed down and packed up his tools. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, but it was charged with something unspoken, something neither of them planned and neither of them acknowledged. Emily broke the moment with a gentle smile. "Thank you again." "Really?" Ryan returned the smile, but his felt different, subtle, almost bittersweet. "Any time. Daniel's my friend. I'm just helping out." He said the words as if reminding himself of the line he wouldn't cross. He walked toward the door, hand on the knob, then paused without turning around. "If you ever need help again, don't hesitate to call." Emily opened her mouth to respond, but the words stuck. She simply nodded. Ryan walked out into the night, the front door closing softly behind him. Emily stood there for a long moment, staring at the quiet door, feeling the house return to silence. She sat beneath the newly fixed light, hands wrapped around her tea mug, heart unsteady for reasons she didn't fully understand. It was just a light, just a small favor, just a quiet night. But somehow, things didn't feel the same anymore. The next evening, Emily sat alone at the kitchen island, the new light shining above her like a reminder of the previous night. She tried to focus on her book, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ryan's quiet expression. The way he hesitated before leaving, and the tone of his voice when he said she deserved someone who noticed her. She didn't take it as romantic, she took it as truth she hadn't been ready to hear. Daniel called briefly that night, but the conversation was short and rushed. "Sorry, Em, I'm exhausted. We'll talk tomorrow, okay?" "Of course. Good night." She didn't blame him, but the distance felt heavier after Ryan's visit. She wasn't looking for attention outside her marriage. She just missed being seen, being understood. The next morning, she tried distracting herself by cleaning, organizing shelves, and baking muffins to kill time. The house looked spotless, yet she still felt restless. By the afternoon, she finally texted Ryan, not about feelings, not about the moment they both avoided mentioning it. "Thanks again for fixing the light. I owe you coffee sometime." She didn't expect a fast reply, but he responded within minutes. "I'm near the cafe on 7th. If you're free, join me." Emily stared at the screen. She hesitated, not out of guilt, but because she wanted to stay respectful of boundaries. Still, sitting alone wasn't helping anything. And coffee wasn't anything inappropriate. She grabbed her coat and headed out. The cafe was quiet, warm, decorated with yellow lights and wooden furniture. Ryan sat by a window, hands wrapped around a mug, lost in thought. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening. "Hey, I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either," she said, honestly. They ordered drinks and sat across from each other. At first, the conversation was normal: weather, work, weekend plans. But slowly, the distance between them filled with deeper, more honest words. Ryan looked out the window, voice thoughtful. "You know, Daniel talks about you all the time. He says you're the reason he keeps going. He just doesn't show it well." Emily smiled, though it felt faint. "I know he loves me. I just miss him. It feels like I'm living life beside him, not with him." Ryan nodded without judgment. That happens when life gets too heavy. People don't drift because they stop caring. They drift because they get tired. Emily stared at her cup, surprised by how much those words hit her. She hadn't said it out loud, but she had felt that exhaustion growing between her and Daniel. A quiet gap neither acknowledged. She looked up. "What about you? You look tired too." Ryan laughed under his breath as if caught off guard. "Yeah, life's been complicated." He didn't elaborate, so she leaned forward slightly. "You can talk to me. I listen, you know." The way she said it was gentle, not emotional. Just sincere attentions, something he maybe hadn't felt in a while. Ryan finally spoke, voice low. "Sometimes I feel like I'm always there for other people, but no one really notices when I need someone too." There was a weight in his tone. Not romantic, not desperate, just human loneliness. Emily felt a pang of empathy. "I notice. Maybe not always, but I do now." His eyes met hers, and for a moment the world outside the cafe blurred. It wasn't attraction, it was recognition. To people who understood what it felt like to hold things in. Ryan looked down again, almost embarrassed by the intensity of the moment. I care about you, Emily, but I also care about your marriage. I don't want to be the reason things get complicated. She appreciated the honesty. It grounded her. I don't want things complicated either. I just needed someone to talk to. Thank you for being that person. His shoulders relaxed, tension easing. You deserve to be heard. The conversation flowed more naturally after that, but it carried emotional depth. They talked about dreams, fears, how relationships change, how adulthood turns love into something quieter and sometimes harder to feel. There was no flirting, no crossing lines, just honesty in a space where both felt safe to speak. As the sky outside turned pink with sunset, Emily finally checked the time. I should go home. Ryan nodded and stood with her. At the door, he hesitated again, choosing his words carefully. If you ever feel like this again, you don't have to sit alone with it. She understood he wasn't offering himself romantically. He was offering support, friendship, presence. But there was still a quiet emotional pull that neither of them named. Emily smiled gently. Thank you, Ryan. He returned the smile, softer this time, almost sad. Any time, Emily. They walked out of the cafe, going separate directions. On the drive home, Emily felt both lighter and heavier. She finally had clarity about her own heart. The problem wasn't Ryan. The problem was how much she missed emotional connection in her marriage. She didn't want something new. She wanted to fix what she already had, but the unexpected conversation with Ryan opened her eyes to what was missing. And now she couldn't ignore it anymore. The kitchen light glowed warmly when she walked inside, as steady as ever. It reminded her that broken things could be repaired, but only if someone actually tried. Daniel returned home late on Sunday evening, carrying a suitcase and exhaustion on his face. He stepped inside, kissed Emily on the forehead, and dropped his bag near the door like always. Emily felt warmth seeing him again, but also a quiet hesitation. She didn't know how to explain what had shifted in her heart. The first hours together felt ordinary. They ate leftovers, discussed flight delays, and watched a few minutes of television. But beneath the casual conversation was something unspoken. Emily watched him carefully, noticing how his mind seemed somewhere else. How he checked his work emails between bites of dinner. When the lights flickered on, no longer broken, Daniel finally noticed. You fixed it. Emily hesitated a second too long. Ryan stopped by. He fixed it for me. Daniel blinked, surprised but not upset. Oh, that was nice of him. He didn't ask why Ryan came over, didn't ask how Emily had been feeling while he was gone. Didn't sense the tension beneath her simple answer. It wasn't intentional. Daniel wasn't unkind. He just didn't see what wasn't said. Later that night, Emily lay awake while Daniel slept beside her. His arm rested over his pillow, not around her. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about how strange it felt to feel lonely with someone inches away. She reminded herself not to blame him. Marriage had seasons. People could love each other and still drift. But now she understood. The missing pieces, not because someone else filled them, but because someone else made her realize they existed. The next morning, Daniel made coffee and rushed around the kitchen, already running late for a meeting. Emily tried to speak gently. Can we sit tonight? Just talk. I feel like we need it. Daniel nodded quickly, but his attention was on his shoes and laptop. Tonight, definitely. I'll be home early. Emily smiled, wanting to believe it. But evening came, and he texted. Running late. Don't wait up. Love you. She ate dinner alone. Again, she didn't cry or get angry. Instead, she sat quietly with her thoughts. She began to understand that her loneliness wasn't sudden, was built from small moments they never addressed. She needed connection, not just partnership. Her phone buzzed while she washed dishes. She dried her hands, expecting Daniel instead. It was Ryan, just checking in. How are you holding up? Emily stared at the message. She felt grateful someone noticed her silence. But she didn't want Ryan to become the person she talked to instead of her husband, so she typed carefully, "I'm okay. Just trying to fix things here." Ryan responded, "I hope you do. You deserve a strong marriage." The message wasn't flirtatious. It was supportive. And that made her think even deeper about what she needed to repair at home. She put her phone away. This time, instead of sitting alone in frustration, she took action. She wrote down everything she had been afraid to say, not accusations, just truths. "I miss spending time together. I feel like we live separate lives. I want to feel seen and valued again. I still love you. But I'm scared we're drifting." She folded the paper and kept it beside her bed. The next day, Daniel came home early like he promised, holding takeout and looking a little less tired. Emily sensed this was the moment she had been waiting for. After dinner, she breathed deeply and spoke with courage. "Daniel, I feel like we've been distant. I'm trying, but I miss us. I miss the way we used to talk about everything." He stared at her, surprised, as if hearing it clearly for the first time. "I didn't realize it was this bad." Emily's voice cracked slightly, not from anger, but from vulnerability. "I don't want resentment to grow. I want us to fix this before it becomes something harder." Daniel set his fork down and leaned forward, finally giving her his full attention. "Emily, I'm sorry. I know I've been buried in work. I didn't mean to make you feel alone." She nodded. "I know. But I need you present, not just here physically." Daniel reached for her hand, something he hadn't done in weeks without being prompted. "Thank you for telling me. I want to do better. I don't want to lose what we have." For a moment, she saw the man she fell in love with, the one who made promises with his heart. Not just words. They talked for hours about schedules, plans, building routines, weekend trips, reducing travel, finding time for each other. They didn't solve everything in one night, but they created a path back to each other, and that mattered. Yet even after that emotional conversation, a quiet thought lingered in the back of her mind. If Ryan hadn't been there that night, would she have realized how lost she felt? Not because she wanted Ryan, but because he reminded her of the parts of herself she had stopped expressing. A few days passed peacefully. Daniel was more present, helping with dinner, watching movies, listening more. The house felt warmer again. But Emily knew something still unsettled her. The next time she saw Ryan, it reminded her that the emotional shift wasn't finished. She ran into him accidentally at the grocery store. He looked surprised but calm, carrying a basket of snacks and tools, as if always prepared to help someone. "Hey, how's everything?" Emily gave him an honest smile. "Better. We talked. It helped." Ryan nodded with relief, not disappointment. "I'm glad. That's how it should be." He didn't ask for details, didn't try to reopen emotional conversations. Instead, he stepped back respectfully. "Just remember, don't lose yourself while fixing things. You matter too." She appreciated that. It didn't pull her away from her marriage. It strengthened her desire to rebuild it. But as she walked away, she couldn't ignore one truth: the emotional connection she shared with Ryan Small. Honest, unplanned, had opened a door she wasn't meant to walk through, but couldn't pretend didn't exist. Some people enter your life not to stay, but to remind you of what you've been missing. A week later, Emily found herself walking through a small downtown cafe on a rainy Saturday morning. She had come to pick up coffee and a pastry, hoping to enjoy a quiet moment alone. She didn't expect to see Ryan there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea, looking at his phone. When he looked up and saw her, he offered a polite, reserved smile. There was no tension, no awkwardness, only a quiet acknowledgement that they had shared something important, even if it was brief and unspoken. "Hey, Emily," he said softly. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Hi, Ryan," she replied, returning the smile. Her voice was calm, measured. She had spent the past week processing the emotions that had surfaced since his visit. And she was finally feeling steady again. She had faced the distance between her and Daniel and had begun repairing it. Ryan gestured to the chair across from him. "Mind if I sit?" Emily shook her head. They settled into the seats, the rain outside tapping lightly against the windows. For a moment, silence filled the space. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was quiet, reflective, full of mutual respect. "How's Daniel?" Ryan asked, his tone gentle, sincere. Emily hesitated for a second. She didn't want to share too much, but she wanted honesty too. "Better," she said simply. "We talked. We're working on things." Ryan nodded, his eyes reflecting relief and something unspoken. He didn't push, didn't ask questions he didn't need to ask. He understood boundaries. "I'm glad," he said quietly. "That's what matters." There was a pause, and then Ryan cleared his throat, as if he had made a decision he had been holding on to. "Emily, I'm leaving. Next week I accepted a job in Seattle. It's sudden, but it's the right move." Emily blinked. She hadn't expected this. Seattle. Wow. That's far. Ryan smiled faintly, not bitterly, but with a hint of nostalgia. "Yeah, I need to start fresh somewhere new. I can't stay here. It would be confusing for both of us." Her chest tightened slightly, not because she wanted him to stay, but because she realized the depth of his thoughtfulness. He was leaving to prevent any lingering complications, to preserve what was theirs without interfering. It was a gesture of respect and care. She reached across the small table and placed a hand over his. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "Thank you for everything. For fixing the light, for being there that night. And for being honest." Ryan's eyes met hers. For a moment there was quiet understanding and acknowledgement of the unspoken emotions, the fleeting connection and the boundaries they had both respected. He nodded, squeezing her hand gently. "You take care of him. And yourself too," he said softly. "You deserve happiness." Emily smiled, feeling warmth and closure. She didn't feel guilt, confusion, or longing. She felt clarity. Ryan had reminded her of what was missing, but he wasn't the missing piece. That piece belonged to Daniel, to the marriage she had chosen and now actively nurtured. "I will," she said. "Thank you, Ryan, truly." Ryan stood up, took a deep breath, and looked out the window at the rain. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Emily watched him go, knowing this was goodbye. There were no dramatic gestures, no lingering glances filled with longing, just a quiet ending that felt right. When the door closed behind him, Emily exhaled slowly, feeling the room settle. She looked down at her coffee, taking a sip and letting the warmth flow through her. She realized that Ryan's presence in her life had served a purpose, to awaken awareness, reflection, and action. He hadn't created distance or tension, he had illuminated what needed care and attention. That night, Emily returned home to find Daniel waiting. He had managed to finish work earlier than expected and greeted her with a tired but genuine smile. No words were needed at first. They embraced, and in that moment, everything felt grounded again. The quiet tension that had built over weeks dissolved in the simplicity of touch, of presence, of connection restored. They settled in the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. Emily reflected on the past week, the small moments with Ryan, the honest conversations with Daniel, the self-reflection she had allowed herself. She realized that relationships required attention, intention, and courage, not just love. "I missed you," she said softly, looking at Daniel. "I know work has been hard, but I needed us. I needed you." Daniel reached for her hand, holding it firmly. "I missed you too. I didn't realize how far we had drifted. I'll do better. We'll make this right." It wasn't a promise of perfection, but it was commitment, the kind that mattered more than any fleeting distraction, any outside influence. Emily felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in weeks. The house felt warmer, brighter, not just because of the fixed light overhead, but because of the restored emotional connection between them in the quiet moments that followed. She thought about Ryan one last time. She didn't feel longing or regret. She felt gratitude. He had entered her life like a quiet spark, illuminating a problem she hadn't fully faced. But he wasn't the solution, and she didn't want him to be. The solution had always been here in her marriage, waiting for attention, waiting for courage. Emily and Daniel talked late into the night. Not about work or distractions or fleeting worries, but about them. They planned small weekends together, committed to checking in on each other emotionally, and rediscovered the simple joys of shared meals, laughter, and mutual support. Every conversation, every shared glance, every laugh rebuilt what had been worn thin by distance and routine. The kitchen light above them glowed steadily, no longer flickering, no longer unpredictable. It mirrored the state of their relationship, light repaired, steady, and dependable. It was a symbol of what happens when someone takes the time to notice, to act, and to nurture what matters most. Emily leaned her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling warmth, comfort, and love. She realized life wasn't about dramatic gestures or fleeting excitement. It was about presence, honesty, and choosing to care every single day. That night, with steady light above them and hands intertwined, Emily felt contentment. Not temporary happiness, but the steady peace of two people committed to each other. Outside, the rain continued softly, washing the streets clean, leaving a sense of freshness in the world. Emily smiled quietly, knowing that she had faced confusion, uncertainty, and emotional turbulence and had come out stronger. Life would have challenges, distances, and occasional sparks from the past, but she was grounded in the present. Her marriage was alive, steady, and ready to flourish again as they both drifted into sleep. Emily thought about the lesson of the past week. Sometimes, people come into your life to remind you of what you already have. They don't belong in the story permanently. They are there to illuminate, to help you see, and then quietly leave. That was Ryan's role, and now she understood it fully. Closure wasn't painful. Closure was clarity. She reached for Daniel's hand in the dark, fingers intertwining effortlessly, feeling the rhythm of his heartbeat. She wasn't longing for another presence. She had what mattered most, the man she loved, and the courage to nurture what they shared. The light above their heads glowed steady and warm, a quiet witness to renewed commitment, clarity, and hope. Emily knew that as long as they tended to their bond, no flicker could disturb the warmth they had rebuilt together, and in that gentle, quiet moment, Emily realized something profound. Sometimes, the smallest sparks in life reveal the true sources of light. And she was finally home,